The history lesson for today. On August 2nd, 1914, Kaiser Wilhelm II, German Emperor and the King of Prussia, he sent an ultimatum to King Albert of Belgium. He said, "We're going to cross your land and go into France because we're going to attack France, but we don't want to attack you. We just want to pass it through. Would that be okay?" King Albert sent a message back that said, "No." You see, Belgium had been a country since 1830. And in 1839, there was a treaty signed, the Treaty of London. And Prussia signed it, Belgium signed it, England signed it, and a few other people signed it. And what that did was it made Belgium a neutral, and everybody guaranteed their neutrality. So on the 4th of August, Germany declared war on Belgium and crossed the border, which started the fighting war of World War I. Now, when they went in, the Belgian army did not really appreciate this. So they stood in the way of the German army. Now, understand that they did not have up-to-date weapons. They were not very big, but they did their best to slow the German army down. And the farmers didn't really appreciate the soldiers wandering through their gardens and their fields, tramping their fields, and so they started shooting back too. Now, the Germans called these the Frankes Turies, free shooters, and they didn't like it at all. So they started burning homes and executing civilians. So this included the town of Arschat, had 156 civilians dead, and then 211 dead, Tamines, 383 dead, and Dinant, 674 dead. There were men, women, and children, just put against the wall and shot. Were these legitimate targets? On Wednesday, August 19th of that year, the Germans went into a town called Louvain. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, so I apologize. Now, understand that the civic leaders of Louvain had taken away the weapons of the civilians because they didn't want them fighting them because they didn't think they could win. On the 25th of August, there was a friendly fire incident with the Germans, and the Germans started massacring the people. They took the mayor and the rector of the university, and they took them out and summarily shot them, and other people too, and just started throwing them in ditches. That night, they went into the library there, and they started a fire. Over 230,000 books were destroyed that night, including 750 medieval manuscripts, 800 manuscripts that were printed before 1500, plus personal libraries and papers of judges, professors, and physicians, doctors, all destroyed. Was that a legitimate target? So understand, with the Russians going into the Ukraine, there's a lot of Dharma lessons. And the one we're going to look at is the 6 perfections. So generosity, giving material possessions to those in need, including people you don't know, and people you like and don't like. Giving protection for those in danger, travelers and refugees, etc. Giving wise advice and Dharma teachings to those who need them. Now, it doesn't take a lot to go on the web and find stories of people who are actually being very, very, very generous at this time. And there's many wonderful stories. So ethical conduct. This one might be a little harder to find examples of during a war, or is it? Ethical conduct is abandoning destructive actions, for example, refraining from the 10 non-virtues, and engaging in constructive actions, for example, joyfully taking opportunities to act constructively, and also benefiting others by helping the suffering and the sick, giving counsel and advice to those who are obscured or ignorant of means to help themselves, protecting those who are afraid, who are in danger, who are about to be killed or injured, comforting those who are grieving, whose relatives have died, who have lost their social position, helping the poor and the needy, providing for those who are in need of a place to stay, such as the poor, Dharma practitioners, and refugees. Helping to reconcile those who are quarrel and seek to be in harmony. Stopping those who are acting negatively or are about to. So maybe there's not so many examples, or it's not so hard to find examples of it. Patience, fortitude. Fortitude is the ability to remain undisturbed in the face of harm or suffering. Being patient does not mean passive. Instead, it gives us the ability to think clearly and to act or not act. Anger and hatred can blind you to a better means of dealing with negative situations, something we don't want to happen. So it gives you and the person who is in conflict with you an opportunity to find a peaceful solution. We all wish Putin would kind of do this. 2 days ago, we did a medicine Buddha puja, and one of the people that talked was one of our friends who is in the Ukraine right now. She said the most difficult thing she was working on was that she did not want to be angry at the people who were doing terrible things in her country and to her people. Joyous effort. This is probably even more difficult to find in this mess that's going on in Ukraine. But we need to combat the 3 types of laziness that would definitely be more productive than the combat that's actually going on over there right now. So procrastination and sleep. Putting off Dharma study and practice. So we all know the antidote to this is meditating on death. And unfortunately, there's a lot of opportunities to do this right now. Attachment to worldly affairs and pleasures. Figuring out what's actually important. Of course, studying and practicing the Dharma is the most important. But right now, for some reason, I think the situation, most people in Ukraine, and indeed in the world, they have other things on their mind right now. Discouragement and putting yourself down. Hey, if this is your thing, we all need to remember that we and everybody else have Buddha nature. Everybody else. Concentration. The ability to focus single-pointedly on a constructive object. Developing serenity. If only we could all do that right now. Right now, there are so many distractions that it's hard to work on concentration. But if we're going to become a Buddha, it's absolutely necessary. Wisdom. The ability to analyze what's virtuous and non-virtuous, as well as the ability to perceive emptiness, the lack of inherent existence of all persons and phenomena. And understanding dependent arising aids in understanding the emptiness of inherent existence. So let's take a brief look at dependent arising. All the functioning things in our world arise depending on causes. Phenomena exist by depending on its parts, and phenomena exist in dependence on their being conceived and given a label. So when we understand dependent arising, it helps us to understand emptiness of inherent existence. And understanding this is the key to awakening, to getting us out of samsara and the misery that it brings us. Emptiness, this may be the hardest one to remember, because while we all understand that war is a mere label, and this is a real war, make no mistake about it, no matter what Putin says, people are killing and people are dying. Now I remember exactly where I was on August 2nd, 1990. I was in the United States Navy. I was sitting on board the aircraft carrier USS Lexington. It was about 8:30 at night. I was in berthing compartment number 6 lounge. The captain came over the 1MC and told us we were at war. I remember it so clearly. I was sad. I was very, very sad. And I was sad because I knew that my shipmates, the people who wore the exact same uniform I did, the people who I worked with, the people who I played with, the people who I lived with, were going to be sent into harm's way. Those are the words that went through my head. And believe me, they take on a very different meaning when you're in a shooting war. But at the same time, I was relieved because I knew that nobody in my family, not my mother and father, sisters or brothers, cousins, nieces or nephews, nobody was going to be involved in that war. Now, the people in Ukraine, they don't have that luxury. The Russians are bombing hospitals, they're bombing schools, churches, old folks' homes. Is this a legitimate target? So let's be real. I am not a Buddha. I am not a Bodhisattva. And I really don't expect to be one in this lifetime, but maybe in the next. But if this country was invaded, I'm going to fight. I'm going to do what I need to do to keep the people safe. And I would hope that I would be able to do it without anger, with intelligence, with imagination, and without picking up a gun and pointing it at somebody and shooting it. But if in the end I am labeled a legitimate target, bring it on.